The tradition of the church, Epiphany, which means manifestation, commemorates, among other things, the baptism of Jesus, and this tends to fall shortly after Christmas, so typically in early January, in the cold of winter. I was just thinking about Jesus making his way from Galilee in the north and heading down the Jordan Valley to Bethany beyond the Jordan, or Bethabara, looking for John the Baptist, his cousin. It must have been a chilly baptism for all those who had gathered there to be baptized and to hear this fiery prophet. If we work the date from the Passover mentioned in John chapter 2 verse 13, this date could be as late as March, when spring has come and the temperature not as bitingly cold. John was caught by surprise when Jesus asked to be baptized by him, because he apparently looked up to Jesus. If anything, he felt that it was he who should be baptized by Jesus, thus making him a disciple of the Lord. Jesus, however, insisted on being baptized, and we have this whole picture of something like a dove visibly descending and resting on Jesus.
This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased,
said the voice. There was some necessity for this, a necessity that Jesus said was to fulfill all righteousness. This is interesting and somewhat cryptic. What did the Lord mean by this? Nevertheless, having been baptized, Jesus got going and made his way further south into the Judean mountains and wilderness.
Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterward he was hungry.
Matthew chapter 4 verses 1 and 2. 40 days and nights. That seems like a really specific and long time to go without food. I'm sure he was hungry. It brings to mind the two other persons in the Bible who had done this. Elijah in 1 Kings 19 had gone without food for 40 days and on to Mount Horeb in search of an encounter with God. More quintessentially, Moses had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, not once but twice, on that same mountain. There he received God's law and a blueprint for the kingdom. I'm wondering if it is possible that the events of Jesus' life recorded here were meant to parallel in some ways the journey Moses had made, a baptism of sorts through the Red Sea, going through the wilderness and then fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. I've always wondered what else might have transpired during those 40 days Jesus spent in the wilderness. We only have records of the temptation that happened at the tail end of those days. Could it be that, like Moses, this was when Jesus heard from the Father and received clarity about his purpose and the direction for his ministry? Could it be that those were 40 days of hearing, receiving, fellowshipping, communing with the Father in preparation for the cross he would have to bear? A time when Jesus ascended the mountain of the Lord, so to speak, sustained not by physical food, but by every word that proceeded from the mouth of God, along with the joy and love that fellowship brought. He had food to eat of which we do not know, said Jesus in John 4:32. The fruit of fulfilling God's will. Now as Lent rolls around, perhaps we too could make our way up that mountain to find the food Jesus found, to download, as it were, from God the purpose and trajectory of God's will for our lives.